his voice at the time. 5 years ago, I could have done this in a flash, he said, thinking back to the early days when they were cranking out rockers like Long Tall Sally. But he stuck with it, grinding it out every morning until he finally got the take that felt right. Now, John Lennon, always one to throw a little shade, had his own thoughts on Paul's performance. He actually loved the song, but thought Paul's vocals didn't quite hit the mark. I always thought I could have done it better, Lennon said. It was more my style than his. Of course, in typical Lennon fashion, he added, but he wrote it, so what the hell, he's going to sing it. It's classic Lennon and McCartney, John acknowledging Paul's songwriting talent, but still thinking he could have nailed the performance better.
When I joined, Paul was the only one who would sleep with me.
Well, there was actually a little bit of a thing to that. I was never very prejudiced. No, I thought that was the best move, really, because when you joined and you were like the new fella, and I thought, well, if I hang out with you, then they'll all be like, so I thought it'd be good to
Put Paul with him.
Yeah, because then it would be all right then. Yeah, it would,
anyway,
because
but then it changed. It would be with anybody.
Some people are good at acting. I have trouble enough just trying to pretend to be me.
My name actually is Jans Hoggebuk. And I am actually a Swedish chap who's standing in for Paul McCartney tonight to make a lot of money and just run off with it. Why do you think such rumours come up? Why do they come around? Because Paul McCartney's dead, of course. Why do they come around? Because Paul McCartney's dead, of course. It was a little bit strange because people did start looking at me like, is it him or a very good double? I was going to say, you do a fantastic Paul McCartney. You are really one of the best Paul McCartney impersonator. I was going to say, you do a fantastic Paul McCartney. You are really one of the best Paul McCartney impersonator.
Yoko had a child in America, and her first husband was American. After the divorce, the relationship was all right between us and Mr. Cox, and we had Yoko and he had her, and it was fine. But one day, something happened, and we just didn't see her. And Yoko hasn't seen her child for 2 years. For 2 years, we've been chasing him all.
Why do you feel that Uncle Sam is trying to force you to leave this country, which you now say you love?
There's a whisper campaign going around against us. Don't you know they're financing a revolution? Don't you know they're going down to disrupt the Republican convention?
Are you financing anything?
I've never financed anything that has anything to do with violence. Yoko.
As I'd done a lot of exploration myself, I was able to sort of show them things we could do. Things like backward tapes and speeds and all kinds of effects and so on, which they loved. And they wanted, as I'd done a lot of exploration myself, I was able to sort of show them things we could do. Things like backward tapes and speeds and all kinds of effects and so on, which they loved. And they wanted. Was it about Tara Brown? No. Tara was just a friend of ours who was Guinness family. He was just a lovely bloke. Everyone who knew him liked him. But the song wasn't about him. The song was actually just... Was it about...
Anyway, we all know why John can't be here, and I'm sure he would be, and it's hard really to stand here supposedly representing the Beatles. It's what's left, I'm afraid. But we all loved him so much, and we all loved Paul very much.
Because you're so glib saying, oh, we'll ask the other three. Now we can only ask two, which is dragging its way, but I'm sure he's okay.
And they all talked about it, and suddenly I got a call from Paul. Hey, Ringo! He doesn't even do that Liverpool accent.
Because you're
Trying to pretend to be me. That is the biggest joke. The biggest joke, to be yourselves. Because that was the purpose of going there, to try and find who yourself it really is.
Yes, well, we found that.
And if you were really yourself, you wouldn't be any of who we are now. Oh, naturally then. It sort of wears off and it comes back again. Like just recently I feel quite excited to be alive, regardless of whether I'm making a record or promoting my record. Buy my album now, right? See people Bill making a pig of himself. So maybe we could just do a few sessions with him and with Paul. And just trying to pretend to be.
Today I am basically going to be saying, hey, this is what actually happened. For the part of the video from Justice Sir James Paul McCartney, the State of the PID Nation, November 2024 report. Now I understand this video happened like almost a year ago now. It'll be a year and 2 months, so it's been 10 months since this video was published. But the State of PID Nation then is probably going to be similar, if not the same. Paul died in that car. We still don't know for sure if it was an accident or a crime. I'd say it was an accident. I can't really I don't really have a say on that part. This one, I want to say that it's William Shepard. It's William Frederick Shepard. I've heard, I don't think it's William Wallace. I want to state that. And I don't, I've heard Campbell proposed, but I think it's Shepard. Yeah, we don't know where he's buried. They talked about how, his mother is buried in one place. My best guess, and this isn't confirmed, like the last one, that he would be buried in Strawberry Fields because of the song Strawberry Fields Forever, saying Paul McCartney Forever instead. And making the place a song would be remembering Paul. Would be remembering the place Paul was buried. That's my thoughts. It could be different than yours. And then there's these little, thingies at the end. Oh. What we know very little or not at all. We have very little data about William before 1966, an orphan from Scotland. Okay. I think if you look onto the page for Vivian Stanshall, the wiki page, that says how the Bonzo Doodah Band formed, that could be a very good source. And then you can also look at the Mercy Beats. And the band that Phil Acro was part of, the Moody Blues, or whatever they were called before that. a policeman from the session, a musician from Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots. Yeah, but we do know more information. It's not... Other. Or John? Yeah. Paul was the only one who died and was replaced. John and George did die later. Yeah. William does not have 6 toes. Plus, why would you think that? No, he does not have a glass eye. A latex eye, yeah. They're more than Paul. This is my opinion. Yes. Kind of. I think if you look at, let's say, 1958 to September 16th, 1966, there was a lot of different polls, because there was one in 1963 that I remember. I think the 1963 one and the September 11th, 1966 one until September 16th was a Paul McCartney that they used and a person that they knew. Because since they'd used him since 1963, so I would say there were different polls. I disagree with that. But I wouldn't say from 1958, because the Beatles weren't famous then. In 1963, they kind of they gained fame. So let's continue. Were there more Williams in the period 1967, let's just say 2025? Yeah, the answer's still no. I do want to say, whoever did the face for for Paul McCartney, Billy Shears, did a horrible job with, not trying to make it look like a human face. There's, little parts of his face that go, directly down. I think there's just a bunch of, human skin. I don't know the right word for it. Because his skull is very, long. I'll show you the 1963 video that I mentioned. This a 1963 tape. That's Paul McCartney. The audio.
There's a prize melody in the LP from Paul, and Paul, congratulations. Very well done. Thank you. I'm sure she does. She hasn't sent it yet. I hope she does, though. Oh, it's a great one. Listen.
I think it was fall the whole time. Do I think this is the fall that we know? No. This is probably someone else. It could be a bunch of people, There's no specific name that we can point to and say, hey, that's that guy. We could look to Paperback Writer, I would say, and say his name is Near, but Near's a horrible name. I think that this guy is a friend of Brian Epstein. This video is gonna get marked as, restricted or whatever. Or just because I said, the Beatles manager. And, yeah, I didn't mean the other. Yeah, anyway. So, yeah.
Is it true you sleep with your eyes open?
Well, I haven't seen this, I do, but actually the fellas say that I do. They've sort of seen me. Seen me with my eyes open. I haven't seen you, Joe.
How can you do that?
I don't know, it's just sort of hard.
Just clever. Just brilliant, Paul. Please ask Paul if he plucks his well-shaped eyebrows. I think he... Do you?
No.
You know, and it doesn't look so... No, they're perfectly beautiful girls. They're absolutely beautiful. Paul, do you...
The eyes look a bit cleaner, right? Paul McCartney did not die in 1963. I want to state that.
Fine girls screaming all through your act.
No, we like him screaming, generally all of us, but it's a bit much all the way through.
Yeah.
But we love him screaming.
So, there'll be some screaming now, so what's your next number going to be?
I'll get you.
You will?
Anyway, that's the end of the video. What are you doing here, chops? Leave. Want to see what pops up.
No? Especially when it's very obvious that's all you want.
I don't know.
The kind,
would worry.
you can tell
because the
what
only
people
thing about
expect to be told.
that is that
when they've sort of read it
performance for us,
what the answer is, and they just
it's
want to get
gone
it down on
downhill
tape.
performance because we can't develop when no one can hear us. You know what I mean? So for us,
so sometimes you
to
do that.
perform is it's difficult.
Just because it's quicker to do it than go
want
to the explanation for the real answer. But not with.
Oh yeah, we want to do it, but if we're not listened to, then we can't even hear ourselves, and we can't improve. We can't get any better.
And does this occur sometimes with people who look for gimmicks about you? What's... one of the things she did was...
Split it on me.
Cassius Clay. One of the things... Sir Joseph. It's about this deal with FBI. I need another $1 million on the written... Sir Joseph.
Rubber stamp.
Very good at forgetting who I am, because like, as far as I'm concerned, Paul McCartney is like the name I was given.
I feel any kind of, I guess resentment is much too strong a word, but any kind of hesitation about the fact that you will always, in all probability, be identified as a former Beatle.
No, I don't mind it. I'm always going to be identified by my real name, also Paul McCartney. But that doesn't bother me. And ex-Beatle is another kind of tag, which doesn't bother me. I'm proud of what I do. I'm always going to be identified by my real name, also Paul McCartney. Also Paul McCartney. So what I wanted to try and do with Sgt. Pepper's album, what turned out to be Sgt. Pepper's, was to try and get the Beatles to forget we were the Beatles. And so I kind of hit upon this idea of us all having alter egos that will dress funny, will pretend we won't be the Beatles, we'll be Sgt. Pepper's band. And so that when you stepped up to the microphone and you were going to do a vocal, instead of thinking, oh, these are all my normal nerves, all my normal vocal fears, no, it won't. It's this other guy. So you can just superimpose this other person on everything you had to do in that album. And it led to a lot of fresh ideas. So everything we were going to do normally, we'd say, no, it's another band, remember, it's got to be different. So it meant that it was a very quite revolutionary album, I think. Had a lot of fresh ideas. And I think that was the main trick. That was what I suggested to everyone. I said, look, if we'll get dressed funny, and we'll be on the cover funny, and we'll all think of our... So it was like a Mike Leigh play. But he's got no script. But he says, no, right, what's your name? Do you think you're a Dennis or a Bob? And you work it up from there, and you gradually find this new identity for yourself. That's what I was trying to do. It was the most difficult period of my life. Number one, the Beatles were breaking up, and this was my band, this was my job, this was my life. So I wanted it to continue. I thought we were doing some pretty good stuff, Abbey Road, Let It Be, not bad. And I thought, we could continue. That's good to be a good boss. And I have been for like a couple of years.
It's like I always feel as though I'm trying to put you down and stop you playing. But I'm not. I'm trying to stop us all playing until we know what we're playing.
My life could have gone a different way. I had a couple of jobs in factories. That could have been my life. Am I really that guy? Is this the same body I'm inhabiting? And it is quite sort of strange. And then Paul McCartney is the sort of successful bit of it all that I'm very proud of. But I don't imagine I'm him. Because it'll just blow my head off. Well, I think there's always an element of that to everything I do. I always sort of think, they shouldn't be paying me this money. I'm not him. I'm some little kid masquerading as this guy who is like the famous guy. He's so incredible and continues to be so incredible that I just feel very lucky. I still think it's kind of magical thing. I still can't believe it. There are two Paul McCartneys. There are two Paul McCartneys. There are two Paul McCartneys.
I suddenly realised that I didn't actually know how to set up a band. If you think about it, I've never actually done it before. I joined the Beatles as an already set up affair.
I can't take while you're there, so we might not. You don't. Bye-bye. See you later.
Cheers, here's to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Here's to Ringo Starr, Richard Starkey, born in Liverpool. Best drummer in the world. The man. My friend. My little brother. Here's to you, baby. I've been living a lie. I've got too much on my mind. I think of everything to be discovered. One of them was Stella, my little baby. She was now designing fabulous for Canada for growing. She's a little baby. She's riding by on our farm on a little pony. And she said, "Are you Paul McCartney?" They know I'm Daddy. Really? So, so it's kind of him and me. Me is me that was always in this body, and the body's just grown up.
Sure. The guy behind the eyeballs.
Yeah. And then him is that famous guy.
What's it like to be you?
Weird, man. Really. You know what? It's actually great, but it has its moments when you suddenly realise, oh my God, I'm that famous guy.
Yeah.
But it's really very nice, and I'm very thankful, and I wouldn't want it any other way.
Well, that's good because you have no choice. You're kind of stuck in being this huge icon, and then.
And how do you manage something like that? Because it was a global rumor, but it was a little bit strange because people did start looking at me like, is it him or a very good double?
Well, that was the idea. That was the other part of it, that there was a guy who looked like you taking your place.
No, well, this is him. That's a secret. I can't tell you. For years I've been able to fool people. I'm not Paul. You don't want a fake. I cannot reveal it just yet.
What is your own personal attitude to this?
It turned out my attitude towards it is quite light. But let's face it, ain't nobody getting out of this one alive. So it's you want to just tell the truth, but you've got to be guarded to some extent. All the people who come out with the truth normally get knocked down. Paul McCartney's the sort of successful bit of it all. I don't imagine I'm him, because I'd just blow my head off. Am I really that guy? Is this the same body I'm inhabiting? And it is quite sort of strange. He's having his haircut. He's having his haircut. I got a little voice. He's having his haircut. Been lucky just falling into the Beatles. They asked me to join. So that was there. I never had to form a group. No, I didn't get the Beatles together at all. That was already formed.
A huge rumour. At one point, a conspiracy theory, if you like, that Paul McCartney was said that you are not Paul McCartney, you're an imposter pretending to be Paul McCartney. The internet are very passionate about this, and there's been clues, like, is it Sergeant Pepper, you play it backwards?
Everyone was stimulated with way too many stimulants.
Right.
So it was a pretty crazy time. This is true, and there wasn't really any way you could stop it. For years I've been able to fool people. I'm not Paul. You don't want a fake. Let me introduce to you the one and only Billy Shears.
You can live a lie till you die. One thing you can't hide is when you cripple inside. Those freaks was right when they said you was there. The only thing you done was yesterday.
The witness think that they may have some clues that Mr. McCartney is in fact dead, has been for some time, and that his associates, the Beatles, are constantly trying to inform us of that fact. On the other hand, those who claim to be close to the Beatles say there's nothing at all to it, that Paul is very much alive and nobody ever tried to suggest anything. We'll hear from those witnesses and hear what they have to say. There is no judge in this case because you're the judge. You decide whether Paul McCartney is dead, and if he is not dead, whether somebody is trying to persuade us that he is, and if so, for what reason.
November 30th, 1969, a local TV station aired a RKO television special which F. Lee Bailey conducted a trial examining various expert witnesses on the subject of the Paul is dead rumor. The program was never re-aired and doesn't exist on videotape. Thanks to a very clever unknown person that taped the audio with a microphone in front of the TV speaker, we can now reveal what really went on. This is what happened. The original video was made 5 years ago.
Where do you live, Mr. Gibbs? Detroit, Michigan. And what is your occupation? I'm a disc jockey on an underground radio station called WKNR-FM. Calling your attention to the 12th day of October of this year, 1969, Mr. Gibbs, in the afternoon, were you on duty and on the air? Yes, sir. And did you receive a phone call from a listener about Paul McCartney, the Beatles singer? Yes, sir, I did. Yeah, anytime. What's going on? I was going to rant with you about McCartney being dead. What is this all about? Well, the youngster said, would you play one cut for me on the air forward? And he said, take the album and what we call the White Album, play a cut called Revolution Number 9, and play it forward. And as you do so, the guy comes on and says, number 9, number 9, number 9. He repeats it. And at that point, the kid said, now play that backwards. And I played it backwards. And man, I freaked. I went crazy because of the fact it says, turn me on, dead man. I just flipped out. Is that the album? Yes, sir. I want you to listen now and tell us whether or not this is what you heard when you reversed the recording.
Number 9.
What other examples, if any, did you find of curious doings on these albums and recordings? Well, at that point, the switchboard at the station started to light up like crazy, and kids started to call in, but I still had this fellow on the air, and he said, will you play one other thing? And he said, play this one forward. And he said, get the Magical Mystery Tour album. Is this that album? Yes, sir. This is what with reference to that album did you do? Well, I got out Strawberry Fields, which is a cut on here. And right at the very end, he said, play it. And he said, see if you can hear something in there. And so I play the album forward, and you hear very distinctly at the end, someone saying, I buried Paul. Is that forwards or in reverse? That's forward, sir. All right, will you listen now and tell us if this is what you heard at the end of Strawberry Fields? Have you found any other examples beyond the ones you've described? Oh, yes, sir. Again, in the White Album, you get into a very strange thing. It's in between So Tired and Blackbird. There's a mumble. But then if you play that backwards, it says, Paul is dead man. Miss him. And it's very clear that way. May we hear it now then and see whether or not you recognize it as what you heard when you uncovered it. Yes, sir. Do we have your name, sir? Siegel. And what is your occupation? I'm a recording engineer for Gold Star Studios in Hollywood. Siegel, have you heard the recordings that we just played and through the other witness? Oh, yes. And have you sufficient technical experience to give us any opinion as to the likelihood that these could have been accidentally implanted? It's my considered opinion that they could not have been accidental. Can you tell us a little bit about how these recordings were made and what would be necessary to produce this effect? It was played backwards, so the tape was cut out, turned backwards, put back in. That piece definitely had some editing done. Mr. Siegel, based on your experience, do you think it likely or even possible that these could be just sounds which through coincidence seem to reflect a tragic event or a death? But it is possible for perhaps one or two to be accidental. But in the majority, no. I think that they actually were planted.
Tape and electronics have brought an enormous new feel to music. It's surprising what you can do once you have a sound recorded on tape. There's a whole range of things you can do, which it would be obviously far too complicated to describe to you in detail. But take the sound of an ordinary cymbal, for example. Have a listen to this. Now, have you heard it backwards?
May we have your name, sir?
My name is Fred LeBour,
And where do you live?
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
What is your occupation,
I'm
please?
a student there at the university.
Are you the same Fred LeBour who published on October 14th, 1969, an article in the Michigan Daily, a newspaper published by the university, which begins as follows. Paul McCartney was killed in an automobile accident in early November 1966 after leaving EMI recording studios, tired, sad, and dejected.
Well, I was supposed to, they asked me to review Abbey Road, which was the current Beatle album. So, and also there were a lot of rumors going around that Paul was dead, so, I just started putting all those clues together.
I hand you a copy of the album published by the Beatles called Abbey Road and ask you to explain what it was there that made you suspect that Paul was in fact dead.
Well, there's John. The four Beatles are crossing a street called Abbey Road, and they are leaving what appears to be a cemetery on the left-hand side of the album cover. The first Beatle, John Lennon, is dressed in white and with long hair, looks either like a doctor or a minister or even a Christ-like figure, a God-like figure. The next man walking across the street is Ringo, who's dressed as an undertaker. The next man is Paul, who's wearing an outdated suit. He's barefoot, which would suggest a corpse, suggest his symbolizing
It is the fact that people are buried in England without their shoes.
That's true. That's so I understand,
The
yes.
fourth figure.
And George Harrison is wearing denim clothes like he's a grave digger.
What significance, if any, do you attach to the parked Volkswagen with a registration plate on the back?
Well, the license plate says 28 if, and if Paul McCartney were alive today, he would be in his 28th year of existence.
In other words, he would be 27 looking toward his 28th
That's
birthday.
correct.
Ask you to reverse the album and tell me whether or not you find anything on the rear of the album that to you is suspicious or appears to be deliberate.
Well, there are 3 dots in the wall up near the top that appear, if a line was drawn between them, it appears to make the number 3, so it would read 3 Beatles.
Could you connect them up as you suggest?
3 Beatles.
Did you say that was intended to be a message that there are now alive only 3 Beatles? That it's evidence that you find persuasive?
Yeah, it's a coincidence in a series of hundreds of coincidences in the album.
And you another album that has been published by the Beatles, I think, less than a year ago, called Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah, there are a lot of clues. On the cover, the 4 Beatles are dressed up in animal costumes with masks on. And it said that the front Beatle is Paul, dressed as a walrus in black, in a crucifixion pose. In the inserts inside the album here, in the picture book sort of thing, it says, "I am the walrus." "No, you're not," said little Nicola. And then when the Beatles album came out, the White Album, a year ago, there's a song in it called Glass Onion, in which John says, "And here's another clue for you all, the walrus was Paul."
And you think that is John Lennon disclosing the fact that Paul is in fact dead and that's why he's the walrus?
Well, it's John Lennon just saying the walrus is Paul. I don't know, exactly what he was trying to do.
Is there anything else in specific lyrics that you think forms a part of this entire packet?
Yeah, and Sergeant Pepper, he blew his mind out in a car. He didn't notice that the lights had changed.
And the suspicion is that he was in fact killed in an automobile accident.
Yeah.
Is that right? You're examining now the rear of the album. Sgt. Pepper's.
That's right. There are 4 Beatles on the back, and one's back is facing us. The others are facing us face on. One's back is turned. That's Paul.
All right. And on the front of the album, do you find anything significant as to the configuration in which Paul McCartney is?
Well, the whole album is really reeks with death symbols. I mean, there's a grave on the front, which they have acknowledged to be some sort of a grave. Down in the lower right-hand corner is a group of flowers in the shape of a bass guitar, left-handed bass guitar, which if looked at in a certain way, also spell out Paul, question mark.
Why is left-handed significant as to the
Paul's
bass guitar?
left-handed.
Is he the only left-handed Beatle?
Yeah, that's right.
What about this parent hand that is hanging over his
Yeah, that's a symbol that seems to recur a lot. It supposedly indicates the presence of evil, singling one person out for the presence of evil.
I noticed that in the photographs on the inside of this album, all of the Beatles appear in some sort of costume, but a sleeve patch on the left arm of Paul McCartney, whom you say is left-handed, has the initials OPD on it. Have you found any significance to those initials?
Yeah, in England that's supposed to be it's the equivalent of our DOA, dead on arrival, and it means officially pronounced dead.
You've made reference to other pictures of the Beatles where only Paul McCartney is without shoes, which you interpret to some extent as a suggestion of death. Where have you found those?
Well, on the cover of Abbey Road, most obviously, but in the pictures that came with the Magical Mystery Tour album, one where they're all standing and they have their hands up, and there's a hand behind Paul's head, of course, next to a white piano. He's barefoot on page 10. And on page 13, he's standing barefoot with his shoes over next to the drums.
Is there anything unusual about the shoes that you can see?
It appears as though they're red stained.
Did you examine this photograph of the 4 Beatles dressed in white, each with a flower, and tell me if there's anything unusual that you found about it?
Yeah, Paul is wearing a black rose, and the other Beatles are wearing red roses.
And what significance do you attach to that?
The black rose obviously symbolizes death.
Your name, please?
Yeah,
And where do you live?
Hollywood, California.
Do you know any of the Beatles personally?
Yes, all 4 of them.
And why is that?
I worked for their company Apple in London for 2 years.
You've heard these recorded Phillips that are found in reversing the track. Do you think they're accidental?
No.
They were put there deliberately.
Yes.
Sir, what is your name?
Peter Asher.
And do you know Paul McCartney, Mr. Asher?
Yes, I do. I've known him well for about 5 years.
How well do you know him? Is he a close friend?
Yes, he's a close friend.
Did he at one time live with you, in fact?
Yes, he did. He stayed at my house for a while.
And so you've known a man who calls himself Paul McCartney both before and after November 1966?
Yes, I've known both of them.
You satisfied that he's alive?
Absolutely and completely.
I see. Well, conceding that for a moment, do you think that the Beatles have deliberately put a suggestion of death throughout their songs?
No, I do not. No, I don't.
Do you think all of these things that were pointed out?
I think the clues are a mixture of coincidence. They're a mixture of things that are on the records and that if you listen to in a certain way could be interpreted in this light. But I don't think that any of them are clues planted in order to suggest that Paul is dead.
Do you accept the explanation that he gave in Life magazine for all of these coincidences?
I see. I mean, I have no reason not to. I myself, of course, don't know the explanation for each of the very many minute clues that these people have concocted. But I do know enough to know that they are certainly not deliberate clues and that the majority of them are in the eye and ear of the beholder rather than in the record.
I see. Is my vision defective, or is Paul McCartney wearing a black rose?
He is indeed. He is indeed.
No question about that.
There is no question.
Do you think that was deliberate or accidental?
I have no way of knowing. I wasn't there when they filmed that scene.
You do know, don't you, that black roses don't grow that way. They have to be specially prepared.
Yes, I've been told that.
Paul McCartney told Life magazine that they just happened to run out of red roses, so he put on a black one. Do you believe that?
Yes, I believe that, yes.
You think there was a black one lying around by accident?
Yes. I doubt if they're real roses. This is his costume. I'm sure they had a black one as well as some red ones.
Isn't it a fact that some claim they weren't wearing any flowers at all? Those were painted on afterwards.
Well, I suppose that's possible as well. They could have done the scene and then decided they'd look better with flowers in their lapels.
If they were painted on afterwards, the use of the black one was certainly deliberate, was it not?
That would be easy to tell, of course, by looking at the film itself, which is available.
Turn your attention, if you will, to the album called Abbey Road. Mr. Asher, knowing as you do something in the styles of today, isn't it the fact that that's an out-of-date gray suit?
It is indeed now to take place.
Isn't it a fact that people in England, when they are deceased, are buried without their shoes? But we find him elsewhere without shoes, and the shoes are nearby with what appears to be some blood on them. Did you notice that? It was in the Magical Mystery album, I believe. Can you examine that and tell me whether or not the only people not wearing shoes once again is Paul?
Yes, it is. That's right. It is not have shoes on.
And the only pair of shoes without somebody standing in them is next to Paul.
That's true.
What about the reddish stain in the shoes?
Oh, that could be anything. It could be like a printing.
Might be ketchup or red paint.
Yeah, it could be. I don't think it looks like it's on the photograph to me, not the shoes. But either way, my point is that I know, that I know he's alive. I know the Beatles wouldn't do a thing like this.
You think that the so-called clues, remarks, and other things that are found in these recordings as they're taken apart are all coincidence?
It's a combination of things that aren't there, and in some case maybe someone was saying, "Oh, my microphone's dead" or something, and now you hear, "Oh, you
Just happened to be
hear
picked up.
Yes.
Do you think they could be that sloppy so as to put that accidentally onto a stereo tape?
Not accidentally in the sense that they know it's there. If you do a take and someone says something during the take and it's the best take, you leave it in.
I see. After the Walrus picture was out and on the street,
Yes.
Paul was described in a song called The Glass Onion as the Walrus by John Lennon, who said, "And now I have another clue for you all, the Walrus is Paul." Now, is that an accident?
The whole song was, it is a reference to the fact that people do frequently attempt to find clues in their albums.
Oh, I see. And that's the only reason he put that in there?
Yes.
Well, now, Mr. Asher, you claim, of course, that Paul is alive. That may well be so.
I know.
You also claim that the Beatles did not deliberately try to create this myth in order to
That is what
increase their publicity.
That is what I know to be true, yes.
But it has increased the publicity, hasn't it?
Well, only because all you people have taken it seriously enough to do all this incredible nonsense for an hour about something that really is just, not true, and in Paul's own words, is bloody stupid.
Life magazine, too, is guilty of incredible nonsense, is it not?
Yes, they are indeed.
And Time magazine is guilty of incredible nonsense.
Well, you can't blame them any more than one can blame you because it's news. It's only news because people are stupid enough to want to believe it.
I see. You think that it does any good at all for the Beatles to be thus publicized about a very fascinating possibility?
I really don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you're probably right. Their record sales have probably increased because of this. But that's certainly something that doesn't concern them. They're not about to embark on some ridiculous publicity thing to try and sell more records. They've sold all the records they ever need to
Yes,
sell.
I understand. Are you a radio technician?
No.
An audio technician?
I'm familiar with the techniques of recording. Yes,
You
I'm a
heard the
record
testimony of an expert that those things on those records had to be deliberately planted and could not be the result of accident. Now, do you still say they were an accident?
You've asked me this question 3 times as to whether I think they're an accident, and I've explained. Some of them are accidental, some of them are not there, some of them are there, but are not necessarily what they are heard to
What
be.
about I Buried Paul? Is it there?
It sounds like it is to me, yes. It sounds like John is saying I buried Paul.
What about Turn Me On, Dead Man?
I couldn't hear that myself.
So you say it is not there?
I couldn't hear it.
What about the word miss him, miss him, miss him? You are, as you have put it, a very close friend of Paul McCartney. Well, isn't it a fact that even if you thought he was guilty of a little hoax here, that you wouldn't say so?
That's probably true, yes. If I really thought he was hoaxing, I'd probably back him up.
So you say that you're not defending him because you don't have to, but if he were guilty of something, you probably would defend him anyway, and that basis on which we must...
No, that's a very unfair ending.
Thank you, sir. What is your name, sir?
Sal Iannucci,
Where do you live?
Los Angeles,
By whom you employed?
Capitol Records.
Is that the same Capitol record company that publishes the Beatles albums?
That's right.
And in what capacity are you employed?
President of Capitol Records.
What do you know about Paul McCartney being dead?
I've heard a lot of talk and I've read about it, but I don't believe it.
Do you approve the artwork in these covers that come out?
Usually.
You find the existence of a black rose on one, but not all of the Beatles to be of no significance, I take it.
Not in my mind.
What has happened to the sale of Beatle records since this wave hit the country, so to speak?
Well, the Abbey record has been selling well.
If the Abbey record is new, the others have been on the market for a while. You say that you've had no increase in sales, felt no effect from all of this publicity?
Well, on the 2 records which have been discussed, the Magical Mystery and the other record, Sgt. Pepper, we've noticed some increase recently in the number of...
A sharp increase?
It would be
be substantial over what would be expected, but I'm sure that it's caused in part by the discussion and the conjecture as to whether McCartney. Would you, as president of Capitol Records, participate in a hoax of this sort in order to increase sales? No, I don't think we'd engage. Then do you say that none has been perpetrated to your knowledge? Not to my knowledge.
If Sgt. Pepper were the funeral, then the White Album would be the coffin. And the lyrics sheet, the hymn. The accompanying poster is a collage of photos. One photo in particular, according to the rumor, grabs the attention. It's supposed to be the imposter before the makeover. There's the white car again.
Your name, sir?
Alan Klein,
And where do you live?
New York City.
What is your occupation?
I'm the president of Abco Industries. It's a business management company.
Do you represent these Beatles we've been talking about?
Yes, we do.
And for how long have you represented them?
9 months.
Is one of the Beatles that you represent Paul McCartney?
Yes, he is.
Do you agree with Mr. Asher that these are all totally haphazard? There is no purpose and message behind any of the artwork?
I don't think there's a message behind the artwork at all. The Sgt. Pepper album was a concept album which dealt with, in effect, what the Beatles felt they might be like when they were 64 years old. Now, so consequently, you would have the question of age and maybe death.
But don't you agree that Paul McCartney is constantly being singled out? Something is different about him than the rest of the Beatles.
Well, he's different than the rest. I think they're all different.
Have you had any discussion with the Beatles since these stories got loose?
Yeah, I was in England last week. The only thing I did question John on was the statement, which you can hear playing when you play the record forward, where I buried Paul. And it was a very simple explanation. When you make a recording, you will have sounds or maybe imperfections. And,
that's quite an imperfection. You say it was an accident. I buried Paul.
What he was referring to was the fact that on that particular take, his guitar buried Paul's sound. And that's what he was saying.
And that's his explanation?
Yeah, sure and simple.
But Paul didn't give that to Life magazine when they interviewed him.
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't with Paul when he gave it to Life magazine.
But you've seen the published interview.
Well, I don't know that what they did is quoted him word for word.
Do you accept Paul's explanation that he wound up with a black rose when the others had red ones just because they happened to run out of red roses?
Sure.
You know how black rose is created?
I don't know that was an actual rose, and I don't think you do either.
Well, whether it's a rose, a carnation, or any other
It could have
flower.
been a prop. In other words, an artificial rose.
So, Mr. Klein, his statement was...
So I had a black carnation because they'd run out of red ones. And I said, all right, I'll have a black one out of whatever you've got.
This is all accidental.
Yeah.
Not intended by the Beatles to give a suggestion of death that might give rise to these stories?
Absolutely.
Do you think the Beatles are in any way profiting, according to your knowledge of their finances, from the intense public interest in these albums?
They don't have to stoop to this type of publicity in order to, financially reward themselves.
Well, Mr. Klein, absent any commercial interest in the product of all this publicity, do you think they might be up to just some prankery?
I think they were annoyed. In the beginning, I don't think they really cared, but I think Paul got very annoyed with it. He went away. 2 weeks ago, he was annoyed.
Do you think he's anxious to have these stories set to rest?
Well, I think he certainly took a giant step. He allowed Life to come up there, and he allowed pictures.
Despite all rumors and reports to the contrary, Paul McCartney of the Beatles is alive and walking around. If a little irritated that people keep saying he is dead. Here's a picture of him made Wednesday night in Glasgow, and he is on his feet, alive.
There were two real basic questions. A, is Paul McCartney dead? And B, is there someone taking his place? I would tell you, if we could come up with someone who write as well as the second Paul McCartney, I think we've made a very good substitution. But I don't think you can...
Mr. Klein, conceding the talent of whoever is now wearing the Paul McCartney suit, so to speak, it would indeed be quite a story if he were replaceable in the manner suggested, would it not?
Well, I think it would be almost as impossible as it would be to, say, substitute fingerprints.
And speaking of fingerprints, what steps has Mr. McCartney taken to compare the prints that he's now wearing on his fingers with the ones which were officially recorded back in the early 60s when he left the country?
Absolutely not. I don't think he has to.
Well, the question then arises as to whether or not the Beatles really want to shut down this publicity and set the stories to rest, or whether or not the sale of albums may be going so well that it would be a bad idea. Why has Paul McCartney not said, okay, look, here's Scotland Yard, they have my prints, here's my fingers, they say I'm the same guy, let's stop the nonsense. He hasn't done that.
If you would guarantee me that every single person would categorically stop and cease and desist, he'd do it.
Recognize a 3 in front of the name Beatles in the back of the album made out by those dots?
Yeah, I think Peter Asher or someone drew it.
But the dots were there before he picked up the pen.
Can I look at it?
Sure.
I wonder if you would do yourself a favor and get the album which was printed in England. That's a terrible short pack album. I'd like to help you.
Is that a bad album? It's empty. Is that a bad album?
Cover.
Defect on the cover?
Oh, the defect on the cover. Great.
Fine, those...
I really can't judge.
Okay.
I would like to see the original.
This then is pretty much the case on the death of Paul McCartney. It is perfectly evident that if the Beatles wanted to, they could have by this time have completely foreclosed this rumor. And such evidence has not been forthcoming from their end.
Story. Paul had been killed in a car crash, and he was killed in 1966. Had an argument in the early recording days of this album back in November 1966. Stormed out of the studio and was involved in a fatal car crash, and he died of head injuries.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to strawberry fields. Nothing is real, we're significant. Slavey rebels.
End of Strawberry Fields, I'm saying cranberry sauce, not ivory sauce.
What he was referring to was the fact that on that particular take, his guitar buried Paul's sound, and that's what he was saying.
What about I Bury Paul? Is it there?
It sounds like it is to me, yes. It sounds like John is saying I buried Paul.
Did you hear it? I buried Paul.
Just trying to see where we are now and see what we've got around us, see any mistakes we've made, straighten them out. What they're saying and what they're doing is sort of nothing strange about it. It's just dead straight. But it's that they're talking about things that are a bit new, you know, and they're talking about things which people don't really know too much about yet. And so
Good morning, young master. It's 1882. Your mother is hungry. What will you do? There is bread in the kitchen of the bed. shake his sleepy hand. Calling from, I am dying, and I leave it to you. I pleaded, anyone did I do? You'll be taught, you'll be fed up, you'll be hung like a hat. And I warn you, don't do it, young man. Dying, help me, what did I do?
Paul McCartney died in 1966 thing, like honestly, I cannot believe that in 2025 there's people who actually believe that Paul McCartney died and was replaced by a double who just so happened to have an incredible talent for songwriting and singing. Listen, I know that there's people who simply play along because, yeah, investigating the whole thing, trying to make the connections is definitely fun. However, going from that to actually believing the man died, come on now, lads, we gotta do better. For those of you who don't know, the theory basically says that Paul died in a car accident back in 1966 after the band recorded the Revolver album. Being the most popular member of the most popular band of all time, they couldn't simply say that he passed away, so instead they decided to replace him with a double. Already, the theory is pretty ridiculous.
Remember, from the 1940s to 1970s, the United States government had a project because they thought that the Soviets were developing mind control devices, so they began doing a program that developed drugs for mind control.
Paul McCartney has one of the most recognizable voices in the history of music, and he has quite a peculiar face. You can't simply find a double that happens to be the same age.
They didn't find a double the same age. Actually, his double was around 4 years older than him.
Then of course you would need that double to have the genius level songwriting skills he had, which once again, it's almost impossible. But let's use our imagination for a minute and say that that's really what happened, just to have a little fun. If that were to be true, then why would they leave multiple clues across their album releases that suggest that he actually died? Why would they do that?
The Beatles put subliminal messages in multiple of their songs, not necessarily about any, like, conspiracy theory, like Paul is dead, or Paul and John were gay, together. And so they definitely did it, and they definitely knew how to reverse it with the reverse guitar in Rain, the song Rain. So they knew how to reverse stuff. You could also ask yourself, why wouldn't they? They had done multiple subliminal messages, like how Blackbird is about racism. Why would Paul McCartney make a song about racism? Because, well, Paul McCartney wasn't a particularly political guy. So why would he write a political song? So there's a lot of evidence. What Paul's dead people claim as evidence, others say that it's bullshit. It's evidence. It's evidence towards this conspiracy theory. On multiple occasions, they confirmed it, actually. And there's way too many coincidences for it not to be the conspiracy theory that Paul is dead. For Paul not to be dead. It's too many coincidences for him not to be dead. There are too many coincidences when people bring up Paul's dead and say, hey, here's evidence. And they say stuff like the black flower and magical mystery tour on him was a coincidence. They ran out of flowers, but Paul is seen carrying a bouquet of flowers. It's a coincidence, No one really knows what happened there. And that's why we got Paul's dead as a conspiracy theory.
There's so many examples. The Abbey Road cover where he's barefoot, there's some sort of great picture of Sergeant Pepper in the back cover. He's the only one not facing the camera. His frame on the Let It Be cover is the only one that's red. John said that he was dead on a diss track.
Like I said earlier, there's actual evidence. And How Do You Sleep, the song that he's referencing, where he says, those freaks was right when they said you was dead, is valid evidence towards his death, because they say the only thing he wrote was Yesterday, which was a Paul McCartney song. So you can't just discard great evidence proving it as nothing. You have to actually talk about this. And he doesn't do that in this video, which other people who talk about the conspiracy theory, who try to debunk it, actually do, but he's not.
This prank has even made it all the way into an actual interview of his.
So I ended up barefoot on it. Well, this is a sign that it's, I don't know, Sicilian, he's dead or something.
Yeah. But lads, please understand, this is impossible. Paul McCartney is a generational artist. You can't simply find a new one out of nowhere. And stop it, he didn't die.
Underman, honey 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 underman.
Straight press coverage of you too.
What about it?
Were you surprised by the amount? I mean, it's really extraordinary. I mean, the front page of all the magazines.
It sort of started with that thing of, here he is, an ex-Beatle, 10 years later he's coming to play America. Which, funnily enough, I didn't even think about. I didn't realise it was 10 years since I played with the Beatles, and I just kind of thought,
I didn't realise it was 10 years since I played with the Beatles, and I just kind of thought
I was coming on tour. So, I think that's sort of what's done it.
Do you feel any kind of, I guess resentment is much too strong a word, but any kind of hesitation about the fact that you will always, in all probability, be identified as a former Beatle?
No, I don't mind it. I'm always going to be identified by my real name, also Paul McCartney.
No, I don't mind it. I'm always going to be identified by my real name, also Paul McCartney.
But that doesn't bother me. And ex-Beatle is another kind of tag, which doesn't bother me. I'm proud of what I've done.
that's a little close. You don't want to see all my pimples, do you? How about that one? Do you like that one? Actually, that's not pimple. So we're going to be zooming into Paul McCartney and looking at all his lines. So, as you can see by the beginning of this video, a comment said that Paul McCartney has... I'm not going to do the camera thing, because it's going to just be me getting close to the camera, and I don't want to do that. So there, as you saw in the beginning of the video, someone left a comment that says, Paul McCartney's plastic surgery lines are showing more because he is older. Which, I've seen a comment like that before. So I thought I'd come on here, show you what he had during like the 60s, and maybe even the 70s, and maybe on to the 90s, and the 80s, and the 2000s, and the 2010s. And this decade, of course, the 2020s. So, let's look. So there you go. That's a little off. You got that. And then you got this one that goes from his nose. It's a little like that. And then you got... Hold on. I hope the people who I give their comments a mention like it. Like that I do that. And I hope he or she's watching. And then there's... I don't know why. Anyway, I don't know why that many people who... many older people, older than me, and this might just because they're British, have these, like, popping out eyelids. That might be plastic surgery, but I don't think it is. And there's this weird divide between his eyebrow and his nose. Very weird. And it's like the scar right there. Somewhere around there. Look at his eyes. They look bruised or black. Right here.
Okay.
So there's that. He has like a weird U-shaped thing right here. Here. And then there's this chin thing. He has an indent in his chin. So there's that. That's not like a great... I also want you to take notice of the shape of his head. Because, here's his hair. So we're gonna do a rough drawing of his hair. So there's that. And then there's that. That's roughly how his head looks. So that's his shape of his head and hair. Let's move on to other photos. Another girl like this. Luckily, most of these are in color. But unfortunately, these are very far away, so it could be blurry. So there's this line here. I think that was there before. Can't really see, but there's also this line here. Yeah. It's a very long line, and ignore that it's coming out of his nose, because I can't erase it. I can reverse it, but, And there's this weird thing right there, and then, his chin indent. That's not exact, but, And then look at how far away his eyebrow is to his nose. And then there's, his cheeks, like, too close to his eye. No, this isn't just me complaining about Paul McCartney's, face, and this is not me scrolling into his feet. Paul McCartney once said that he dislikes any other colored any other colored shoe than white or black. It's one of those. I think it was black. I put 1967. I feel like I'm gonna be pissed off at the people in the comments. It smells horrible in here. So this is like right before plastic surgery. So you can see more natural face, line right there, but they made it longer. His mustache covering up a bruise, a plastic surgery bruise. And then his chin indent, which he always had, but it's short face Paul McCartney. I'm just drawing. Anyway, so this is like right before, but this is like stretched out. It's weird. This is less weird. This image. You can see, yeah. These are early Paul McCartney photos. Let's look at, so this is roughly his face, you can't really see the indent anymore. You can kind of see that thing going down. The bruises. Let's look at Paul McCartney old, or right now. Yep. So this is Paul McCartney now. More or less a old photo. You can see more dents here. You can see the structure of his face starting to go down more. You got lines in his head, which I don't think is plastic surgery. You got those, which I don't think is plastic surgery. But I think this is plastic surgery. Something happened right there. Same thing about this. Something. The difference between the eyebrows and the nose. That. And that's very noticeable. So, more stuff. We can see more evidence of plastic surgery changes. And look at this, how his face is shaped. His face kind of just started going down. Here's what his face should look like. Something like that. Here's what his face looks like now. So there's clearly a difference between those two. See, that indent's there. So that's what he looks like. So obviously those indents, like, those are nerves. I think we're gonna wrap up the video very soon. So you know that's there.
And the first two songs, Love Me Do and Then Please Please Me, which went to number one, who wrote those? Did you do those together? Or?
John and I, yeah, at that time,